All right, good morning, family. How's everybody doing so far? Awesome. So nice to have the Sloans here. The rest of the Kona Church, my old crew. There's so nice to have Renee visiting as well. Back to your home church. Your home church. Title of my lesson this morning is The Way Has Been Prepared. You know, back in John 14, Jesus says that He is the way. And He's the only way, the way to the Father. In Acts chapter 24, when Paul had been arrested and was on trial, he admitted to King Felix that he worshipped God as a follower of the way, which the Jews called a sect or even a cult. So this way is the way that Christians follow. It's the path that Jesus took, and we follow Jesus as Christians. It is the way, the only way, the best way, right? But it's a journey, right? The way is a journey. And that's what Christianity is when you really think about it. It's a journey. It's a walk with God. It's a walk with each other. And sometimes along the way stuff can happen, right? Crazy things happen in our lives. And I appreciate Jordan sharing for communion this morning. And her way has been rough, but she persevered through the cross and for Jesus' examples, and up and down, in and out, right? That way is kind of crazy sometimes. So today I want to read a little bit about that way. And we'll start off in Matthew chapter 11. And a man named John the Baptist, who had been prophesied about 600 or so years previously, that he was going to prepare the way for Jesus to start his ministry. Matthew chapter 11, the Bible says, after Jesus had finished instructing his 12 disciples, he went on from there to teach and preach in the towns of Galilee. When John heard in prison what Christ was doing, he sent his disciples to ask him, "Are you the one who was to come, or should we expect someone else?" Jesus replied, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight. The lame walk. Those who have leprosy are cured. The deaf hear. The dead are raised, and the good news is preached to the poor. Blessed is the man who does not fall away on account of me." As John's disciples were leaving, Jesus began to speak to the crowd about John. "What did you go out into the desert to see? A reed swayed by the wind? If not, what did you go out to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No, those who wear fine clothes are in king's palaces. Then what did you go out to see? A prophet. This is the one whom it is written, 'I will send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you.'" So John the Baptist was a very powerful prophet, right? He came before Jesus' ministry. He was actually a cousin to Jesus. And he went and prepared the way for Jesus to start his ministry. Now, along the way, when Jesus did start his ministry, John actually baptized Jesus and saw the dove descending onto Jesus when he received God's Holy Spirit. And John saw these things. And Jesus began his ministry after that, after his temptation in the desert. But in the meantime, John, who preached a message of repentance, got into trouble with the king and got himself thrown into jail because he told him, "What you're doing with sleeping with your brother's wife is a sin and it's wrong." So he gets arrested, he gets thrown into jail. So John's way here, his journey, gets a bit rough. And he's in prison. And he's wondering, hey, are these prophecies really being fulfilled right now? Or are we supposed to be waiting for someone else? Because I'm in jail here. Did you guys notice? Did you guys forget about me? Like, my life is not turning out the way I had expected it to. This is like a different way that I thought was going to happen, you know? And sometimes life throws us a curveball. And this is a pretty big curveball for John here. He's in jail. And if you read further on, he actually ends up getting beheaded in jail on his journey of Christianity. And it's a bit scary, right? So John starts to lose faith here a little bit because of his life circumstances. He kind of loses heart and he loses faith that maybe that's not Jesus. Maybe this is not the right way. Maybe there's a different way to do Christianity. And Jesus sends back the messengers. No, these prophecies are being fulfilled right now. I am the way, and you're on the right way. You're on the right journey, even though it doesn't seem like it right now. And so it's pretty cool here. Jesus gives John some faith, and he starts teaching his people about who John is and what a powerful prophet he is. And sometimes you can think, well, I'm doing all these things for God on this journey, on this way, and life's not working out for me. And don't you know that I'm a powerful prophet? You know what I mean? But just because you're a powerful prophet or an awesome disciple of Jesus or even a church leader does not mean that the way is going to be tough sometimes. The way is going to be challenging sometimes. And sometimes your unforeseen things happen while you're on this way, on this journey. So today I hope to encourage and inspire us with some scriptures to help us as we go along this journey. Point number 1, when the way is rough, rise above. Jesus has some very encouraging scriptures here for us. We're going to be bouncing back to Isaiah 40 from time to time as well. So here in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, Jesus continues on, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Well, that sounds so encouraging, that when we come to Jesus, when we're worn out, when the pressures and the weight of life and breath and everything else just becomes heavy and burdensome and we're sinking. And maybe we're drowning in 1 inch underwater or 100 feet underwater. Is drowning and it's happening here. And we're feeling kind of worn out. We can come to Jesus, and it says that he'll give us some rest right here. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 40. You know, that weight, it comes heavy, especially over time, right? You can hold out this water cup here for a few minutes and I'd be fine, but maybe a couple of hours and my arm will start to dip, you know, because it becomes heavy over time. So as we get older as Christians and go through a lot of things, and the burden, the weight, it just gets heavy. And I want to encourage us with these scriptures. In Isaiah chapter 40, verse 27. "Why do you say, O Jacob, and complain, O Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord. My cause is disregarded by my God. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those whose hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Well, he's talking about some complaining starting off. It's like, man, my life is rough here. And you're complaining. It doesn't seem like this is the right way, Lord. Like, why am I on this path? What have I gotten myself into here? And my way seems hidden from God, like he's not paying attention. A lot of times you can have this idea of God as some figure in the sky that's kind of not concerned with what we're doing down here and doesn't really care about us because it's so painful, life is. And we can start to get grumbling and complaining. But the Bible here reminds us, he says, don't you know? Haven't you heard? God is everlasting. He has no beginning. He has no end. He's not going to get worn out or tired. He's so strong that he can't get tired and worn out. So there's the age-old question, can God create a rock so heavy that he can't lift it? It's like, well, it's a mind bender. Like, I don't answer questions like that. I'm like, what? I don't know, man. I'm just a surfer, dude. Why are you asking me crazy stuff like that? Don't you know? Have you heard I've surfed a lot of low tide days and that's too deep for me, you know? The Bible here says that God will give us strength. He'll increase our power when we're weak, right? It says even these young boys around here in the church, these guys with the strong backs and they can carry like plenty chairs when the sisters are watching, they eventually get worn out too. Like there's no girls, no sisters around, it's like 1-2 chairs, you know? Hang on, the sisters are coming. Watch out, man, get carried. You know? I'm like, hey man, I'm glad I'm married. Woo! I have a sore back if I was married, trying to press everybody. But we get worn out. We get weary. Stuff gets heavy. Life is heavy, right? It gets us. It catches us. But if our hope is in God, if our hope is in the Lord, everything's going to be fine. He'll give us strength. He'll give us energy. He'll give us courage. He'll give us faith. He has everything, and he wants to give it to all of us. When I think about an eagle that's soaring, I lived in Alaska for a year when I was a young man, and I remember seeing these bald eagles. Man, they're so majestic. They're incredible creatures. They have these wings, and they just soar. And they go real high up in the sky, and they're hunting, and they're gliding around. They'll jump into the water or grab a fish from a bear and do all kinds of crazy things, And the interesting thing about an eagle is that when a big, heavy-duty, crazy storm comes in, the eagle doesn't hide in the bushes. Or it doesn't just walk around on land or get beat up in the storm. No, the eagle rises up above the storm, glides above the clouds, and he looks down on the storms of life. And he's just gliding and soaring. And he's actually, when he's gliding, he's not pumping his wings, he's just gliding. Right? They have this huge wingspan. They're a majestic creature. And they're actually resting, but they're not stationary. They didn't just take a break and get beat up. They're still flying and soaring and gliding and resting over this crazy storm, right? Unlike the chicken. Chickens are quite different. Chickens, I don't know. I grew up on a farm, right? And we had these chickens, you know what I mean? These chickens, they're walking around all scraggly, beat up and ugly. The storm comes, they're just sitting there, and then they're scraggly, beat up, ugly, and wet. And they're sitting there miserable. You look at a chicken in a storm and you'll get depressed. You know what I mean? Holy smokes. Or you'll just feel better about your own life. At least it's not that bad. At least I'm not a chicken eating grubs off the ground. And those chickens are nasty. They're even their meat is bitter. I killed a wild chicken one time. I was curious to see what it tastes like. I was lifeguarding and I had this thing and I'm plucking the feathers off the back of the ATV in my uniform. I got in trouble, but anyway. Apparently not supposed to kill chickens at work. But anyway, we put it in the barbecue. Man, that thing is so nasty tasting. It's he's been through a lot of storms. He's bitter. It's like a bitter chicken. And so we have these chickens, right? And they're just sitting there, and the storm comes, and they just get beat up. They just take it, and they don't take it and like it. They just take it. They take it and don't like it. You know what I mean? And so that's for us as disciples, right? We don't have to get beat up in a storm of life. That's not what God put us here to just suffer, and life's miserable, and I'm bitter, and I'm depressed, and I don't like it here, and I don't want to be here. That's not what God made us to be. God made us to be powerful, to be faithful, to be bold, to be courageous. And when the storms come, amen, the storms come. And we soar above the trials, the tribulations, and the temptations. We don't just stop and take a break from Christianity. We're still moving forward, but we're soaring above it. And we're not letting the storm take us out, right? We're not contemplating, I'm going to give up on Christianity. Maybe this is not for me. We don't think those thoughts. And John kind of had a moment there. But here Jesus encouraged them. No, these prophecies are very real. And here in the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, this section of scripture right here was written around 600 BC. And it's at a time in Israel's history where they had just defeated the Assyrian army. You guys remember Nineveh, the city of Nineveh, right? They just wiped out the Assyrians. They had this great victory. But then they're starting to hear these prophecies. Because of their sin, God was going to allow the Babylonians to come and wipe them on out. Right? And so they're like, oh man. And so God's just trying to tell them, hey man, don't worry. In the future, things are going to be amazing. I'm preparing this way for you guys. I have the strength that's available to each and every one of you. The strength of God, the creator of the universe, is available to disciples of Jesus Christ. It's available to each and every one of us. That should encourage us right there. Amen. Because if you're not able to weather that storm and rise above it, you'll experience burning out. You'll experience discomfort and distress and depression and anxiety. You'll end up on a roller coaster ride of Christian. When things are going well, you're fired up. You're excited and you're zealous. And then when things aren't going well, you start to dip spiritually and you're bummed out and disheartened and discouraged. And when we're bummed out, disheartened, and discouraged as Christians, it affects the people around us. You know what I mean? It can spread to other people, and it's hard to be around discouraged people. But then all of a sudden, some things go well again. Your Bible talk's doing well, your marriage is doing well, and you're going up the roller coaster, and things are good again. But then you start to get depressed because you know it's so good that it's probably going to get bad again, and you just don't enjoy your life, and it's kind of in and out, and you're contemplating different things, thinking about a different way that Jesus talked about. There's no other way but me. And we don't want to experience that burnout Christianity. See, we can't control every circumstance that comes our way. Likewise, don't let the circumstances control you. Rise above. You know that if you're easily offended, you'll be easy to manipulate. And you got like that eagle, that the rain hits them, it just washes off their back. And it doesn't affect them. You know, they're just fine through the rain and the storm. They rise above. When our hope is in God and not results, we'll rise above the storms in our lives. That's the important thing to remember, right? If we're only fired up when things are going well, we're focused on results. We need to be focused on our relationship with God and being close to Jesus. And we'll never be discouraged. We'll never be dismayed. We'll never get weary, and Christianity will not feel like it's burdensome. Want to challenge everybody here that when stuff doesn't go your way, don't get bummed out about it. Don't complain about it. Don't stress out. And please, 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 don't ever, ever give up. Point number 2, learn the way of the master. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 11. Matthew chapter 11, continuing Jesus' encouragement here, verse 29 says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." See, Jesus didn't mean for us to rest and take it easy and take a break here on earth. No, it's rest for our souls eternally in heaven. While we're here on earth, there is stuff that needs to get done. But it doesn't have to be terrible and awful and bad, because why? We can be yoked to Jesus. If you guys don't know what a yoke is, back then, the people listening here would have understood this because they were farmers. And so they would have 2 oxen, and they would yoke them together with this wooden contraption, right? And it took their 2 necks and put it together, and they would plow a field with a plow behind them. And it would drag these straight and narrow lines so that they could plant in the fields, right? So this was a yoke. So Jesus is saying here, yoke yourself, attach yourself to me and learn from me. You can learn something from me. You can learn that I'm gentle and I'm humble, and I'll teach you to be gentle and humble as well. I love that concept of the master there. Let's go back to Isaiah chapter 40. Isaiah chapter 40 in verse 12. The Bible here says, "Who has measured the water in the hollow of his hand, or with the breadth of his hand marked off the heavens? Who has held the dust of the earth in a basket, or weighed the mountains on the scales, and hills in a balance? Who has understood the mind of the Lord, or instructed him as his counselor? Whom did the Lord consult to enlighten him, and who taught him the right way? Who was it that taught him knowledge, or showed him the path of understanding? Surely the nations are like a drop in a bucket. They are regarded as dust on the scales. He weighs the islands as they were fine dust." Well, God is so incredible. God is throughout the Bible has to remind his followers who he really is. When they start to doubt him, he says, "This is how you can trust me. Nobody's taught me anything. I know everything, and I teach everybody everything." It says that this big island we're standing on right now, this big giant chunk of rock that goes all the way down into the bottom of the ocean, and that mountain that's bigger than any mountain in the entire world, God said that's like fine dust in his hand. It's like it's like, yeah, whatever, dude. I'll hold your island in the palm of my hand. That's who I am. Yes, you can trust me. Yes, you have something to learn from me. No, you can't teach me anything. It's okay, though. And this is what Jesus is saying. You guys can learn something from me. You know what I mean? And Jesus is, how humble is Jesus? Like, isn't that incredibly humble? That he has all that power, being connected to God. Yet he came down here on earth and he decided to be gentle. While they were crucifying him on the cross, he didn't exercise his power to destroy them when he could have. He instead prayed for them. His gentleness is power under control. And he was humble, right? He was able to forgive people that sinned against him. That's true humility. And we can learn from that, right? I love the concept of the master, right? The master and the tutor. And so, or the master and the What are you, student? Yeah, there it is. Master and student. Right there it is. Thanks. One of my favorite masters is, I don't know if you guys heard Bruce Lee. You guys heard of Bruce Lee? Yeah, where's Todd? Where's Todd? It's Todd's doppelganger. So Bruce Lee, man, that guy is incredible. He was so amazing at martial arts, at Kung Fu, right? And a lot of people don't know this about me. I did a little Kung Fu training myself. Back in the day. Yeah. Now check this out. This is a fun fact. I learned Kung Fu from a guy that learned Kung Fu from a guy that learned Kung Fu that learned it from Bruce Lee. I kid you not. I kid you not. It was a long time ago. Granted, it was a long time ago. I'm a man of peace these days. I'm a man of peace these days, but that doesn't mean I don't forget how to be violent, all right? I know Kung Fu. Bruce Lee said, be formless, shapeless, like water. You put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water can flow, or it can crash. Be like, wah, my friends. I say, be like Jesus, right? If we imitate Jesus' character, that's how we attach ourselves to him. That's how we're yoked to him. That's how we learn from him. We put it into practice. Bruce Lee said, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man that has practiced one kick 10,000 times. And if we repetitively put Jesus' teachings into practice and imitate Jesus' character and learn from him, nothing can go wrong in our lives. Everything's going to be okay and it'll be just fine. We have nothing to worry about and nothing to fear. Jesus proved it with his life, with his death, and with his resurrection. There's no doubt about it. All we have to do is imitate Jesus. Be like Jesus, formless. Be moldable, humble, be teachable. Practice gentleness, practice humility, and watch the incredible things happen in your lives. Now, of course, we know that Jesus' humility and Jesus' gentleness are not to be taken lightly or to be taken advantage of. That's not what it means. Romans 11:23 says, consider therefore the kindness and sternness of God. Sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you also will be cut off. We don't take advantage of Jesus and his grace. We don't commit sin so that grace can increase. We're not okay with sin. Jesus wasn't. Jesus was kind and he was willing to forgive and he was humble. He wants to forgive us, but he was also a hard line when it came to sin. I want to challenge this church here today to practice gentleness and humility towards your brothers and sisters, to those around you in the community. And then Jesus will be kind to you. Point number 3, choose the right way. Back to Matthew chapter 11. Closing out our section here with Jesus' encouraging words to us. He says, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Man, I love this passage right here. If we are connected to Jesus like that oxen, we'll make that straight line in our life. That straight path, right? Jesus says it's a narrow way, and it's a narrow path, and it's a straight line. We can't stray to the right. We can't stray to the left. If we're attached to Jesus, we'll go straight to heaven. Straight to heaven, right? Let's go to Isaiah chapter 40. You know, Jesus promises that I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. His is the only way. All others are the wrong way. So it's so important to be attached to him and go on that straight line. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 3. And now we'll read this prophecy about John the Baptist from 600 years ago. It says, a voice of one calling in the desert, prepare the way for the Lord. Make straight in the wilderness a highway for our God. Every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low. The rough ground shall become level, the rugged places a plain, and the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all mankind together will see it, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. That's amazing. We have to ask ourselves, what are we yoked to today? Do you think you know a better way? Jesus says, I am the only way. And this is what John did to prepare Jesus' way. This prophecy is about John coming to prepare the hearts of the people for his ministry. And he talks about this crazy, rugged path of life, these big valleys and mountains and potholes in the ground. He says, I'm going to straighten things out, straighten things that are bent and broken. He's talking about the hearts of men had some flat spots that needed to get taken care of there, right? See, John the Baptist's ministry was to prepare the way for Jesus' return. His ministry was, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. For us today, the kingdom is here now. We're a part of that very same kingdom thousands of years later. It has been being prepared for us for this very day right now. Isn't that amazing that it's been happening all that time, spanning thousands of years? This way has been prepared for us. John prepared it for Jesus. Jesus prepared it for us, and now it's ready. Right? This awesome way, this highway to heaven. I love the concept of this traveling on this path, along this way, this journey. I don't know if you guys heard of the King's Trail out in Kona side, right? You guys heard of that? Yeah. From King Kamehameha's day? Right? So back then, they didn't have these beautiful roads that we have. They didn't have modern machinery or anything like that, right? So they, to connect the different villages so they could trade with each other, they made pathways, right? Now, it's pretty amazing when you think about it. Hundreds of years later, some of those pathways are still there that the ancient Hawaiians made back in Kamehameha's day. And what they would use was they make these big wooden o'o bars. And they were just hundreds of Hawaiians would just pound the lava rocks into gravel. They would use other rocks and they would just smash everything, and they would make these pathways. Now, there's some different legends about what happened on this king's pathway. And some of it's still here. There's hundreds of miles of it. And these Hawaiians made it, right? And so one of the legends states that King Kamehameha was out on his canoe. He was paddling around, and he came across some fishermen that weren't supposed to be fishing because it was kapu. It was his area. So the law was, if you get caught fishing or surfing in the king's area, they can kill you, right? So apparently he gets off of his canoe and he's going to go kill these guys, but his foot gets stuck in a rock. And he's stuck there. And so the fishermen have an opportunity here to kill him so that they won't get killed. But they decide to have mercy on him. And so the king, in gratitude for them not killing him, he makes this pathway across the Kona coast there, sacred ground. So that anybody who's on this pathway in between the villages and the city of refuge is down there, and you're traveling and you're conversing with the different villages with different laws and towns where they're fighting and everything. It says, if you're on this pathway, you're safe. You cannot be attacked. You cannot be killed, no matter who you are or what you've done. If you can get to this pathway along this highway throughout the island, you'll be safe. And that's the way that has been prepared for us as Christians. When we're on this way with Jesus, when we're attached to Him, when we're yoked to Him, nothing can take us out. There is no power, not in heaven, not on earth, that can snatch us from the hand of God. Only our own bad decisions. What an incredible opportunity we have today to be on this way this morning. But our hearts need to be prepared for it, much like in the time of John the Baptist, right? Because our hearts have some missing spots sometimes. Sometimes our hearts are prepared by being repaired. And when your heart is right, the way of Christianity is easy. It's not burdensome at all. But it's got to start in our hearts. 1 John chapter 5, verse 3 says, "This is love for God, to obey His commands. And His commands are not burdensome." Christianity is not too hard. We totally can do it. It's totally within our grasp when we're attached to Jesus. How do we attach ourselves to Jesus? Right here, John gives us a hint. Obey His commands. That's how we show our love for God. If we feel that Christianity is burdensome, it's because we aren't loving God and we're not yoked to Him. We love Him by obeying Him. John chapter 8, verse 31 says, "If you hold to my teachings, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And when God sets us free, we're free indeed. Isn't that incredible? It says if, that big little word. If you want to be a Christian, if you claim to be a Christian, you must hold to his teachings. You must obey his commands, and not just the ones you like, not just the ones you're comfortable with. And that's the beautiful thing about Christianity and having a faith that comes through obedience, right? You can talk about Christianity all you want. You can tell anybody about it. You can show people what Christianity is like with your life. You can do that. But not until someone actually puts his teachings into practice will you ever know that it's true. You have to do it to find out if it's true. So my challenge to all of us here is just do it. Don't hesitate. Be urgent. Get in there and do it. Get your heart right before God this morning and make a decision to obey his commands. And I promise you, you'll never regret it. In closing, back in Isaiah chapter 40. I don't know if you guys noticed, we read the book of Isaiah backwards here. Starting in verse 1 now. Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed, that her sin has been paid for, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. See, God reassures his people there in a hard time in their life that a comfort does await them. Over the next few chapters in Isaiah, he reassures them that a Messiah will come and show them the way to salvation in the form of Jesus Christ. That yes, it's going to get tough for you guys. Yes, it's going to be hard, but good things are coming. Comfort awaits you. Not here on this earth. Rest for your souls in heaven. But there's a way to get through it. It's not too hard. You can do it. I am with you. He reassures them, I am God, and I proclaim that this is going to happen. And these prophecies were fulfilled 500-600 years later, and 2,000 years later for us today. It's very, very applicable. He died on the cross for us. Lots of blood, sweat, and tears went into preparing the way to heaven for us this morning. I had a good time with my kids yesterday, and we have a family devotional on Saturdays. And I love Jesus' parables. I love looking at Jesus' parables and trying to find a teaching opportunity for my children. And then we get to go and do an activity afterwards, right? So I went into Matthew, here in Matthew chapter 13. And there's a really cool parable that Jesus talks about. This parable of the weeds, right? So it's this story about a farmer, a landowner, that Jesus compares the kingdom of heaven to, right? Where they sow these seeds in the field, these wheat seeds. But an enemy comes at night and he sows some weeds in there too. Seeds, a wheat along the weeds, and they grows up together. And what are we going to do? The servants come. He's like, Jesus is like, hey, just wait till judgment day and then we'll separate these things, right? Just wait till it all grows up at harvest time, right? And then the weeds are going to get burned up, and then the wheat's going to get put into the barn. So Jesus goes on later because his guys are like simple guys, like fishermen and stuff like that. Like fishermen. Anyway, and he explains it to them. Verse 37. Whenever anybody gives me a hard time, I'm just a simple fisherman like Jesus' apostles. So Jesus explains this parable of the weeds here in verse 37. He answered, the one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out his kingdom. Everything that causes sin and all who do evil. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. So that's kind of interesting when he talks about this journey of ours, this way, there's an end to it here on earth, right? And the end can go two ways for each one of us. We can be a weed in this life, or we can be a wheat in this life, and there's a consequences to both of those choices. So there is more than one way. There's one way to heaven and one way to eternal fire. That's the choices we have to make, and that's the seriousness of Jesus' parable here, right? That's the seriousness of it. So my family, right? So I teach my kids about this, and we talk about the qualities of some wheat, the good qualities of people, and the fruits of the Spirit. Then we talk about some bad qualities, some mistakes that we can make, and some sins in our treatment of each other. And the kids are having some interactive time, and they're like, "Okay, great, Dad. What's the activity going to be?" I was like, "Well, guess what, guys? You're going to be harvester angels. We're going to go outside and pull some weeds in my garden." And now, before you accuse me of child labor, breaking child labor law, is voluntary. It is either that or the slipper, voluntary. So you have two choices here, kids. So we get out there, and I got my little harvester angels out here, right? So we got some different attitudes happening with the harvester angels, right? We got some grumpy harvester angels that were not fired up about being there. We got some distracted harvester angels. Like, I'm not sure about this pulling weeds thing. I'm gonna go play with the dog over there and throw that ball. We got some worn out, tired ones. They're like, I didn't get a long enough nap. You woke me up too early, harvester angels. And then we got some fired up harvester angels that are encouraged to be there. And they're like, "Yeah, this is great. I love pulling weeds." Then there's me. I think I'm the destructive harvester angel. I'm like pulling the weeds, and like, that looks like a weed, and like, "Oh crud, that's a orchid. Oh man." You know what I mean? I'm like, "Oh, my flowers," and I like my flowers, And see, the thing is here, there's work to be done for us, right? There's work to be done while we're here. And so it's not, I'm not breaking the child labor laws. I'm teaching these kids to have some character. You know what I mean? Put that phone down and pull that weed. That weed is not going to pull itself, child. Get over there. But I'm not sure where everyone is at this morning. Maybe you've been having a rough time of it, going through some ups and downs. Maybe you've been the grumpy, lazy, distracted, and destructive, or maybe you've been hardworking and fire up. I'm not sure where everybody's at this morning. We can all be in a different spot, and we can bounce in and out, right? But here's the thing. I want to encourage you that it doesn't have to be that way anymore. Jesus has prepared a way for all of us to go straight to heaven. The way has been prepared for you this morning, family. While we're on the way there, let's be fired up about this journey together, because we're in this together. It's not a solo journey. We have awesome brothers and sisters along the way. So rise above the storms. Attach yourselves to the Master. Decide today to choose the only way. I love you guys. Aloha.